Have you ever walked away from a woman feeling like you lost, not her, not your time, but something deeper, something inside you, collapsed, and you don't even know why? You tried everything, you were kind, you were attentive, you answered every text, but still, she pulled away, and you were left chasing shadows. If you've felt that before, this video isn't just for you, it's about you. Because there's a brutal truth most men never hear. You weren't rejected because you lacked charm. You were rejected because you lacked presence. In the next 30 minutes, we're not going to talk about tactics or tricks. We're going to talk about something ancient, something terrifying, the power of silence, and how the man who controls it controls everything. Let me take you back to a moment. There was a man who watched his woman pull away. She stopped replying, grew distant, cold. He felt panic crawl into his chest. He typed, erased, typed again, but this time he stopped and said nothing. Days passed. She didn't reach out, but deep inside, for the first time, he didn't feel weaker. He felt free. If you've ever felt trapped in the loop of needing her reaction to feel alive, if you've ever let her silence drive you mad, then this might just be the most important message you've heard, because the world doesn't need louder men. It needs still ones, anchored ones, men who don't flinch, don't fold, don't explain. If that's who you want to be, comment 1 so I know I'm not alone. Like the video. Share it with a brother who needs this. And let's begin. Have you ever left a conversation with a woman and felt smaller, not because of what she said, but because of what you said? Or rather, how much you said, and how little it seemed to matter. You were talking, trying to connect, maybe even trying to impress. And somewhere in that exchange, something inside you leaked out. Confidence, clarity, and composure. You didn't notice it then, but when you walked away, you felt drained. That feeling, that subtle collapse, is one of the greatest blind spots of modern men. We are taught to speak, to explain, to open up, but no one tells us what happens when we give too much to someone who hasn't earned it. You start to feel like something was taken from you, but here's the truth, that nothing was taken. You gave it away, bit by bit, through every explanation, every validation-seeking sentence, every attempt to fill the silence. That's the trap. She didn't overpower you. You overexposed yourself, and that made her feel more in control, and you less. But why does this happen? Because most men are addicted to being understood. They crave emotional clarity. They think that if they can just express themselves well enough, just explain the context, the pain, the intention, she'll finally get it, and everything will make sense. But here's what most men never realize. Women don't fall for clarity. They fall for gravity. They are not moved by the man who speaks well. They are moved by the man who needs nothing, not even to be heard. Think about it. When was the last time you said everything you could to a woman and felt more powerful afterward? Now think of a moment where you said nothing, held your gaze, stayed still, and walked away with your spine straight. Which version of you felt more like a man? Exactly. Silence is not just the absence of words. It is the presence of strength. It is your declaration that you are not here to perform, to convince, to be chosen. You are here to be, fully, unapologetically. When you talk too much, especially in the face of coldness or disrespect, you're not asserting dominance, you're leaking neediness, you're proving that your emotions are negotiable, that your peace depends on her response, and the moment she feels that, she knows she can move you. That's why she pulls away, not to punish you, but to test what you're made of. So next time, when the silence between you grows heavy, when she withholds attention, warmth, presence, ask yourself, will you fill the gap with words, or will you let her feel the full weight of your stillness? Because here's the paradox. The less you explain, the more she feels. The more you resist the urge to be understood, the more she begins to understand who you are, and that is the beginning of power. So if you've ever felt powerless after talking to her, it's not because you lacked something. It's because you gave too much of it away, too quickly, too easily. Don't speak to be seen. Don't react to be chosen. Let her meet you in the silence. Let her earn your voice. Now tell me, have you ever felt like that? Comment 1 if this hits somewhere deep. And if you're ready to reclaim your presence, stay with me. You were told to impress her, weren't you? Dress sharp. Say the right things. Be funny, charming, successful. You followed the script, the nice guy playbook. But somewhere along the way, she still lost interest. You thought maybe you didn't try hard enough, so you tried more effort, more messages, more compliments, but nothing worked. In fact, it backfired. And that's when you realized the harsh truth. Impressing her was never the game. You see, women are not impressed by effort. They are impressed by energy, and the man who tries too hard gives off the scent of desperation. He's like a candle in the wind, flickering, uncertain, begging to be noticed, but a flame that begs never burns bright. Every time you over-explain, over-praise, over-invest, you teach her something dangerous. You teach her that your attention is cheap, that your presence is for sale, and she's the one naming the price, and she will test that price. Oh yes, she'll withdraw just to see how fast you chase. She'll delay responses, show up late, ignore your texts, not to hurt you, but to measure you, to see what you're made of. And most men break at the first sign of distance. They respond with anxiety, jokes, apologies, pleading, anything to restore the connection. But every one of those moves is a confession that she owns the frame, and you're just a guest in it. Let me ask you this. Do you think a lion tries to impress the gazelle? Does the mountain advertise its beauty? No, they exist, and that is enough. The truly powerful man doesn't perform. He doesn't bend his nature to win favor, his stillness, his restraint, his focus on self over approval. That is what creates gravity, and gravity doesn't beg. So what should you do instead? You stop chasing admiration, you stop proving your worth, and you start refining your presence, your habits, your discipline. You make your life so full, so rich with meaning, that impressing her becomes irrelevant. Because here's what no one told you. When a man stops trying to impress women, he becomes the kind of man they chase. Not because he's playing hard to get, but because he actually is. He's hard to get emotionally, because he values his peace. He's hard to get mentally, because he doesn't seek validation. He's hard to get spiritually, because he's already full. And that kind of man is unforgettable. So if you're tired of performing, if you're done being the entertainer, then drop the act. Walk off that emotional stage and let your silence say everything. Now tell me, have you ever tried to impress a woman and felt invisible instead? Comment 1 if you've been there. And if you're ready to reverse the roles, let's keep going. Why does stillness attract? Not because it's a trick, not because it's some psychological hack, but because it's how nature was designed. Look around you. The lion doesn't chase, he waits. The mountain doesn't move, yet it commands reverence. The ocean doesn't speak, but it holds power deeper than words. In nature, the most dominant forces are silent, still, immovable. And you, as a man, were not made to beg, to explain, to please. You were built to embody that same stillness, that same quiet presence that speaks louder than any words ever could. But modern life lied to you. It told you to chase, to express, to be emotionally available at all costs. It trained you to equate noise with strength, attention with worth, responsiveness with love, and now you're exhausted. Because deep inside, you know this isn't power, it's performance. True power doesn't perform, it simply is. Think about the last time you met someone who didn't try to impress you, but you were drawn to them anyway. Why? Because their stillness said something their mouth didn't have to. It said, I don't need you to like me. I like myself enough. And that energy is irresistible. Now apply that to how women feel. When a man walks into her life and doesn't orbit her emotions, doesn't flinch at her silence, doesn't chase her validation, she feels something ancient, a pull she can't explain. Because in a world full of men who move too fast, talk too much, explain too easily, the man who doesn't becomes a mystery, and mystery creates attraction. But don't get it twisted. Stillness is not laziness. It is not detachment from life. It is the refusal to be pulled in directions that dilute your essence. It is the act of being unmoved. Not because you're cold, but because you're rooted. A tree doesn't panic when the wind blows. A lion doesn't chase butterflies, and a real man doesn't compromise his peace to be liked. So, when a woman meets a man like that, a man who holds his frame like the earth holds gravity, she can't help but pay attention, not because he tried, but because he didn't. And that is nature's design. Now tell me, when was the last time your silence said more than your words ever could? Drop a 1 in the comments if you're ready to stop performing and start embodying, because next, we uncover how women really read you without a single word. You think she's listening to your words, but she's not. She's reading your pauses, your hesitation before you speak, your energy when you enter the room, the way your eyes move when she tests your patience. Because here's the truth. Women don't decode language, they decode presence. You can say all the right things, quote philosophers, compliment her beauty, share your intentions. But if underneath those words is neediness, fear, approval-seeking, she feels it, and what she feels matters more than what you say. You see, women are not logical in attraction. They are intuitive, emotional, attuned. They don't want to be told who you are. They want to feel who you are when you say nothing. It's in your posture, your stillness when she withdraws, your breath when the tension rises, your gaze when she looks away. That's what she's reading. And most men fail not because they said the wrong thing, but because they couldn't hold their presence when it mattered most. They over-explained, they pleaded, they filled the silence. And in doing so, they exposed a truth they were trying to hide, that their confidence was only skin deep, that their peace depended on her response. But a man who is truly present, who is grounded in his own stillness, cannot be thrown off by emotion, by silence, by tests. He doesn't react. He responds when he chooses. And that response is always deliberate. That's what unsettles her. Because now she can't read you, can't control you, can't predict your next move. And in that lies the spark of attraction she can't explain. Not because you impressed her, but because you didn't flinch. And the man who doesn't flinch becomes the man she fears, respects, and desires. So, ask yourself, what are you really saying when you're not speaking? Because in those quiet moments, she's hearing everything. If you've ever seen her go quiet after you chased, if you've ever watched her pull away after you tried to explain, then maybe it's time to stop talking. Let your stillness speak. Let your silence shape the room. Let her feel who you are without you having to say a word. Now tell me, has your silence ever made her more curious than your words ever did? Comment 1 if you felt the shift, because next we confront the boy inside you, the one who can't stand that silence. There's a boy inside you, and she knows it. He's the one who panics when she pulls away, who checks his phone every 5 minutes hoping she replied, who rewrites the same text 10 times before sending it, who loses sleep wondering, what did I do wrong? And that boy is why she can control you. Because as long as he's the one showing up in your relationships, you will always seek to be liked, to be approved, to be chosen. But here's the bitter truth. The man she desires is not the boy who begs. It's the one who can walk away. You may look like a man. You may speak like a man. But the moment she senses that your confidence is conditional, that your masculinity is reactive, she's not drawn to you. She pities you because, to her, you've become food. And she will test you. Emotionally, verbally, silently, not because she's cruel, but because she wants to see, is there a man in there, or just a scared little boy? And most fail that test. They argue when disrespected, they chase when ignored, they explain when provoked, they try to prove their worth through logic, emotion, attention, but all of that is just the boy trying not to be abandoned. And she can see it, she can feel it. That's why she doesn't trust you. That's why she pulls away, not because you're too nice, but because you're too needy. You're still asking for love with a trembling hand. You're still performing for approval. You're still apologizing for wanting to be chosen. And until that boy dies, you'll keep losing. But here's the shift. When a man finally sees the boy inside him, not to shame him, but to outgrow him, something powerful happens. You stop chasing, you stop proving, you stop bleeding worth for attention, and she can feel that too. Suddenly your presence becomes heavy, grounded, unshakable. She can't push you, she can't provoke you, she can't manipulate a mirror that doesn't respond, and in that stillness, she meets a man she can't control. Because he no longer needs anything from her. That's the man who leads, who commands, who sets the emotional tone of the room, not through dominance, but through sovereignty. So ask yourself, is it the man or the boy who's showing up when she tests you? Because until you kill the boy, she will never see the man. Now comment 1 if you've felt that boy inside you, the one who can't stand her silence. And if you're ready to bury him, let's keep going. Let's talk about explaining yourself. You think it makes you look honest. You think it shows emotional maturity. You think it proves you have nothing to hide. But here's the raw truth. Explaining yourself is weakness. Not always. But in the context of power, attraction, and presence, it often reveals more insecurity than strength. Because when a man explains himself too quickly, too eagerly, too emotionally, he's not clarifying. He's apologizing. He's saying, I hope this makes you like me again. I hope this makes you stay. I hope this makes you feel safe enough not to leave. And the moment your words carry hope as currency, you've already lost, because she can feel it. The fear, the need, the subtle surrender behind every sentence, and it repels her. Not because you're wrong, but because you're exposed. You're showing her your heart, not from a place of strength, but from a place of survival. And she wasn't looking for a man who survives. She was looking for a man who leads. Leaders don't over-explain. They make decisions, they own them, and they let silence carry the weight. So why do you explain so much? Because the boy inside you still believes that being understood is the goal. He thinks that if she just gets your pain, your truth, your struggle, she'll finally love you. But she doesn't fall for explanations. She falls for energy. The man who says, this is who I am, and then walks, without apology, without justification, without drama. That's the man she can't forget, because he didn't try to be understood. He chose to be whole, and wholeness doesn't need witnesses. So next time you feel the urge to explain, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I speaking from power or from panic? Because most of what you think is communication is just fear wearing a suit, and that fear, it turns kings into beggars, lions into lapdogs, men into boys. So don't fall into the trap. Let your silence do what your words never could. Let it show her. You don't need her understanding to stay grounded. You don't explain yourself, not because you're cold, but because you've grown. And nothing is more terrifying, more attractive, more unforgettable than a man who doesn't flinch, even when she demands answers. So tell me, have you ever over-explained, only to feel smaller afterward? Comment 1 if you've been there, and if you're ready to let your presence speak louder than any excuse ever could. Let's move on. You've heard the word Übermensch. It's not just a fancy German term. It's Nietzsche's answer to a world of mediocrity, obedience, conformity. He saw that most men live on their knees, begging to be accepted, drowning in the need to belong. And he said, enough. The Übermensch is not a man who conquers others. He's the man who conquers himself. He doesn't bend to trends. He doesn't kneel to guilt. He doesn't shrink to please. He walks alone, not because he hates people, but because he refuses to be molded by them. And in that solitude, he becomes sovereign. Now, what does that have to do with women? Everything. Because the modern man was raised to be liked, not to be strong. He was taught that emotions equal depth, that explaining equals maturity, that sacrifice equals love. But Nietzsche called it out. Most men don't love, they need. And when a man needs, he is no longer free. The Übermensch loves without need, walks without permission, speaks without apology. He is not trying to fit in, he's trying to become what he truly is. And what he is untouchable. That doesn't mean cruel, it means whole. So how does this play out in relationships? She tests him. He doesn't flinch. She withdraws. He remains still. She accuses. He watches, not to manipulate, but because he doesn't need to defend what is true. That is the man who creates gravity. She orbits him, not the other way around. Because the Übermensch doesn't chase peace. He is peace, and in his presence, the world either adapts or exits. Now ask yourself, are you living to be accepted, or are you building a life so full, so clear, so honest? That acceptance becomes irrelevant because until you stop needing her, until you stop craving validation, you cannot lead. And a man who cannot lead cannot be loved fully, only used, tolerated, pitied. But the man who walks as Nietzsche intended needs nothing. And because he needs nothing, he attracts everything. So if you're ready to step beyond the herd, if you're done explaining, performing, chasing, comment 1 below, because next we reveal the one thing more unsettling than your silence, the moment she realizes she can't break it. You think your silence is punishment? That when you don't text back, when you don't explain, when you don't chase, she's unaffected. But here's what most men never understand. Your silence hurts her, more than your words ever could. Not because you're cruel, but because you've taken away the one thing she relied on, control. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding her certainty. You stop confirming her power over your emotions, and suddenly, she's no longer the one in control of the narrative. She says something sharp. You don't flinch. She disappears for days. You don't ask. She provokes, tests, withdraws. And you stay still, not cold, not angry, just still. And that stillness, it burns. Because now she's not reading your words. She's facing her own, her insecurity, her games, her chaos. And without your reaction to anchor the conversation, she spirals. You see, most women are used to managing men emotionally. It's a dance they've mastered, a rhythm they know by heart. They push, he pulls, they withdraw. He chases, they accuse, he explains. But what happens when you break that rhythm, when you don't move to her beat? She loses her power, and in that void, she feels naked. Not because you exposed her, but because she can no longer distract herself with your reaction. Now she has to sit with what's real, the emptiness, the pattern, the fear. And here's the twist. That silence, it doesn't make her hate you. It makes her respect you because for the first time, she sees a man she can't control, a man who doesn't fold, a man who doesn't explain himself to be forgiven, a man who doesn't fear losing her because he's already found himself. That man is rare, and rare is irresistible. So stop fearing silence. Stop thinking it's passive. It's not. It's presence, refined, weaponized, unapologetic. Let her feel it. Let her question herself in it. Let her long for the version of you that used to beg and mourn that he's gone, because he is, and in his place stands the man she never expected, but always desired. Now tell me, have you ever seen her become more emotional, more talkative, more confused, right after you said nothing? Comment 1 if you've witnessed the shift, because next, we'll talk about the final battle. Can you hold your stillness, even when she tries to break it? Anyone can be calm when nothing is testing them, but the real question is, can you stay calm when everything is? Because here comes the final test. She'll provoke you, say things designed to sting, call you arrogant, emotionally unavailable, cold. She'll cry, she'll scream, she'll retreat into silence, and everything in you will want to break, to fix it, to explain, to defend your name, your heart, your truth. But if you do, you lose. Because this is not a moment of misunderstanding. This is a moment of revelation. She doesn't want your words. She wants to see what you're made of. Will you break your stillness just to be understood? Will you give up your peace just to be accepted? Will you flinch just to feel wanted again? Because if you do, you've told her everything she needs to know. That your power is negotiable, that your calm is conditional, that your center isn't really yours. And in that moment, she owns you. But if you stay grounded, breathing, watching, feeling everything but reacting to nothing, then she meets something she never expected, a man she can't move, not because he's detached, but because he's free, free from the need to prove, free from the urge to please, free from the boy inside who used to panic. This is not stoicism for the sake of ego. This is spiritual clarity. This is the mountain, holding its shape through every storm. And what happens when you hold? Something ancient unlocks in her. She softens, not out of weakness, but out of surrender, because every test she throws at you wasn't to destroy you. It was to find out if she was safe to rest in you. And the man who reacts fails that test, but the man who holds the line becomes the place she finally exhales. That's why your silence must be sacred, not a tactic, not a punishment, but the boundary that protects your peace. So next time she presses, pulls, provokes, don't collapse, don't perform, just stay, still, unmoved, because sometimes the greatest show of strength is doing absolutely nothing. Now comment 1 if you've ever felt that moment, the one where you almost reacted, but didn't. Because next, we close the loop, the final piece, how to own the world by mastering yourself. You've heard the rules, you've seen the patterns, you've felt the shift, but now we arrive at the edge of everything, because after the silence, the stillness, the self-control, there's one last truth. The man who masters himself owns the world, not because he dominates others, but because no one else dominates him. He doesn't chase, he doesn't beg, he doesn't perform. He simply is, rooted, unmoved, unapologetically whole. This man no longer fears her walking away, not because he doesn't care, but because he no longer needs her to stay. He's already chosen himself, fully, finally, and that choice is the birth of true sovereignty. You see, most men live in quiet slavery, to emotions, to validation, to women, to the illusion that love must be earned through obedience. But the sovereign man doesn't earn love. He gives it, not as a transaction, but as a gift that doesn't beg to be received. And when it's not respected, he walks, not in anger, not in guilt, but in peace, because he knows something the world forgot. A man's value isn't in how many people accept him, it's in how completely he accepts himself. And that man leaves a mark without ever raising his voice. His silence is truth. His presence is proof. His stillness is strength. He doesn't seek comfort in being understood. He finds power in being misunderstood and unmoved by it. So here's your challenge. Can you be that man? Can you hold your line when tested? Can you let go of the woman without letting go of your soul? Can you walk alone, not as exile, but as king? Because if you can, you won't just attract her. You'll attract respect, peace, freedom, and the quiet certainty that nothing owns you anymore. Not fear, not craving, not chaos. You'll become the mountain, and in a world full of noise, the man who becomes the mountain becomes unforgettable. Now tell me, are you ready? If this message awakened something in you, comment, "I choose myself." Like the video. Share it with a man who needs this. And remember, the strong master silence, but the wise know exactly when to break it.